Hi all. So I wanted to go over assignment 1-3, the image processing activity and using adjustment layers. So as we begin to work on our project, we really want to think about the fact that this is going to be a campaign. So you'll want to use consistent imagery throughout. So what you choose for your ad, you should also think about how you can use that for your web banner down the road, which we'll get into in a couple weeks. But if you click into the guidelines and rubric, you'll get this page that has, basically the things that you need to add for this assignment. So you want to have 2 high resolution 300 ppi full color images that you think would be good selections for your ad design. So thinking in terms of beach resort, whether you want to focus on the spa aspect or the beach aspect or activities, it's always good to have a few different images at the ready to sort of add a little bit of each of those elements within. So when you think about seeing an ad for a beach resort, maybe you see something about the spa as a background image, but then there's also a few smaller images kind of peppered in with pictures of, people on a beach or, people out at, a nightclub or relaxing somehow. So it's always a good idea to have a couple different images that you can use in different ways throughout the campaign. But the most important part, I would say, is consistent imagery. So this has, a few different sites that you can get free high resolution images to download. I often use Pexels. I think it's a great site, and this will give you a idea of adjustment layers and the types of adjustment layers that you can use on your photos. But first, let's take a look at Pexels. So I just did a search for beach resort. One thing that I like about this site is that, it has really nice high quality images, but you can also sort of filter it. So if you're thinking about using one image for a full background on your ad, you can do a search for vertical orientation. And when you're thinking about choosing imagery, take a look at, if this was going to be a full background ad, you'd want to have a little bit of negative space within the ad. So, so just scrolling through, I think that this is a pretty good example of an image that provides some negative space. I could see adding a headline in here and having it be easily readable, maybe some text, and then maybe some additional imagery at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and download this one. And then I'm going to go ahead and open this in Photoshop. One thing that you'll notice sometimes when you have images downloaded from these sites, you'll always want to go to image size right off the bat. So Pexels will allow you to download a fairly large image. So if you're looking at this in pixels, I'm going to change this to inches. This image, if I printed it out now, it's 35 by 44, but it's only 72 pixels per inch. So we want to resize and resample this at a larger resolution. So thinking about the layout of your ad, it's an 8.5 by 11 size. So just a regular letter size. So we want to size this to fit. And it's always a good idea to leave yourself a little bit of bleed room. So what I usually like to do is maybe go about an inch bigger than what I need to. So I'm going to do 9.5. That gets us to almost 12 inches as far as height, which is pretty good. And we're going to change this to 300 DPI, and then we'll take a look here. This is at 100%. I have preserve details. You can play with these enlargement settings for the resampling. It doesn't look like at 100% I'm getting much pixelization. Of course, if you zoom into 200%, you're going to start to see some pixels pixelating. So I think this looks pretty decent. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And from here, you can sort of zoom in to 100%. You can see it on a larger scale. I think it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and we'll add an adjustment layer to this. So in Photoshop, you have your layers here. I'm going to pull this up a little bit so you can see a little more. If I go down here to this little half-filled circle, this is your adjustment layers. And I'm going to add a hue saturation adjustment layer here. So if I click on this, you can see it adds a layer mask. And this is what tells you that it's an adjustment layer. So there's a couple different settings here that you can sort of play with. And I recommend just, kind of taking a look at these, seeing how it changes your imagery. I'm just going to go back to default. And let's say I want to make the cyans a little bit more amethyst bag green. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag this over a little bit. But then I want to up the saturation just a bit as well. You'll notice, if you're dragging it too far, you're going to get some really weird colors. If we go back to the master and adjust the saturation, you'll notice the same thing. All the colors are affected here. If I'm just choosing, reds, yellows, those are kind of what is going to be affected by that adjustment layer. So if I go to greens and I up the saturation of that, it's not really affecting too much. So I'm not going to bother with that. You can sort of click through all of these and see what gets affected. You can see how that's sort of changing the shadows up here in this corner, since they're more blue, to make those sort of a purpley color. And that sort of fits in with the brand as well. And let's say we want to just go back to the master and adjust the lightness of this as well. So if this is where I want it, you can take a look at your adjustment layer, turn it off, turn it back on. And I kind of like that. I think it brightens up the photo overall. So let's say I'm happy with that. You'll just save that as a PSD file. So you want to choose Photoshop. That's the default. And of course you can rename it whatever you'd like. I usually, if I'm downloading something from Pexels, I like to keep that name, because if I ever have to refer back to where I got that from and what image it was, this is a good reference. You can just kind of copy this and search, and usually it'll come up. And I'm just going to I'll keep those parentheses here, but put edit. And then you can save it wherever you'd like to save it to. And then you would do that with your second photo as well. So I'm going to go ahead and find another one that I think could possibly work as a second image. And I kind of like this one, so I'm going to go ahead and download this and do the same thing. Open this with Photoshop. So for this one, I think I'm going to do the same thing and just, of course, you want to check that image size. Right now it's at 42 inches wide by 56 high. We're going to go ahead and adjust this to, we're going to make this much smaller in the layout. So I'm going to have this about 6 by 8. And it might not be that full size when I add it into the layout, but we can resize it as we need to. So looking at that at 300, it looks about the same. So go ahead and hit OK. And then again, I'm just going to add another hue saturation. This time I want to sort of concentrate on the yellows. So I'm thinking like, you know, her bikini. Now, if I wanted to make that purple, you can obviously see it's making her whole body purple, since the color is very similar to her skin tone. So one thing we could do here to prevent just, you know, her whole body from being affected by the color change is I just deleted that adjustment layer. And what I'm going to do is use my selection tools. I'm going to go to the polygonal lasso tool, and we're going to go ahead and just select her bathing suit. And we'll get into this more in the next assignment next week, but I just kind of wanted to give you a little preview. And this is something you can certainly do, you know, with this assignment. And I've had other students do this in the past where they're just selecting, you know, portions of their images to put an adjustment layer on. And that is one way to get an excellent grade in this assignment, for sure. And this kind of gives you a good idea of what we'd be doing somewhat in the next assignment. So I'm just going to hit select and mask here. Hit this button. It might take a second to come up. And then we also want to make sure we have her bikini top added as well. So we can use our quick selection tool here to see how this works. We might have to do some adjustments, but that's okay. And I'm just kind of painting this on. So you'll see it sort of added in her neck and shoulder too. From here, we can use the subtract from selection tool just to make sure these areas aren't selected. And then you can always use, you know, your smooth tool just to make sure the edges are kind of smoothed out. I wouldn't recommend going too high with this because you'll notice it starts to bend the corners a little bit, so you won't get the full selection that you necessarily want. So, you know, maybe a 6, a 5, somewhere in there. And then down here where it says output to, we're going to output it to a layer mask. We hit OK. And there is her bikini as just a its own layer. So what I want to do here, I want to make sure we have the full picture. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer. I'm just right-clicking on that layer. I'm going to duplicate this layer. And with this one, I'm going to right-click on the layer mask, and I'm going to delete the layer mask. So this way we see the full image, but we also just have the bikini. So with this layer selected, the bikini selection, we're going to go ahead and add this hue saturation adjustment layer. And now we can adjust this. Let's say we want it to be kind of a purpley color. Now you'll see, because we have this layer visible, it looks like her whole body is turning purple, but what we can do is create a clipping mask here. So I just did a right click. You can release that clipping mask. If I right click again, create clipping mask. And that's all there is to that. And you know, what's nice about these adjustment layers is you can always go back in, adjust them. Let's say I want it to be more of the Amethyst Bay green color. You do that. I like that purple though, so I'm going to leave that as it is. And we'll keep it purple. So then, of course, if you want to do any other adjustments to this, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. You can do that. You can add another adjustment layer here. Let's say we want to adjust the vibrance, the saturation. That makes her look a little orange, but maybe we want to turn that vibrance down a little bit. And you can see this is only affecting this bottom layer. It's not affecting this top layer that has the clipping mask added to it. Now, you can try this. You don't have to do this. You don't have to go to this extent for this assignment, but I wanted to show you this as an option. So if there's something that you know, there's one area of a photo that you want to affect with an adjustment layer, you can. And if you don't want to, you can certainly just adjust the entire photo. So this is definitely an option. Again, I would save this as a PSD file. And again, I'm just going to put edit in the parentheses and save it. Now you'll also want to make sure that you have your before and after image. So usually what you can do is open up a Word document. And while I'm waiting for Word to bounce its way open, I'm also going to make sure I have these saved as a copy. And you can save it as a JPEG. And that's what you'll be able to import that into Word as a JPEG. So let me save as a copy and choose JPEG as your file type. You'll notice there's JPEG 2000, JPEG stereo. Just choose JPEG. So just opening a new document in Word. So once we have Word open, you can go to Insert Picture, Picture from File, and place in, I think I saved one of these to the desktop. And then of course you can resize. I think this was my after. And then you can label it. But first I want to add in the other ones, a picture from file. And this was the before. So we'll have to resize that one as well. See if we can get them on the same page. Might not be enough room, so we may have to resize a little bit more. There we go. So I want the before one to go first. And essentially you want them to fit on the same page. So before, after, and then I would add in the next ones on the next page. So insert picture from file. We've got the before. We'll resize this. Make a space. And then after, insert picture from file. And we'll make them roughly the same size. If it lets me, which it didn't. So this is the easiest way to get them to save as a PDF. So then you would just go to Save As, and you should be able to choose PDF as your export. So you can put your name, you know, before and after, and then save it. And this you'll want to make sure that you upload with your file. So you'll upload your PDF of your before and after, and then your PSD files. So just to double check, to make sure you're uploading everything that you need to be, always take a look at this what to submit section, and it'll tell you your final submission for this assignment should be a zipped file containing 2 layered high-resolution PSD files and a PDF showing before and after examples of each image. PSD files should include all adjustment layers used to correct and enhance each image. So that is all you need to submit for this assignment. So those 2 PSD files and that before and after PDF. And hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions about this assignment, please just let me know.